Alright, Chapter 7. Keller had much to say to Montgomery over the intercom the next day, and a few of the words weren't even profanities. He was utterly furious at him for scheduling a meeting with Mari, and threatened even to revoke his promised protection for Montgomery as punishment. "You have the gall to take an opportunity such as this and do something you knew, you had to know, I had no interest in doing." Montgomery sat glumly on the edge of his mattress, picking at the fibers on its dirty fringes. "Can you cancel?" asked he, feeling not unlike a heavy set of soaking wet trousers. Keller almost laughed. "Cancel? If you knew this woman like I do, you'd not even ask that question. Besides, you promised her more than a get-together. You promised reconciliation." He swore and sputtered for a few moments, then continued, "I have nothing else to say to you." Then we have something in common after all, Montgomery thought. But no, that was wrong. He had licked his lips and took a deep breath. This was a long shot, but maybe it wasn't as crazy as it sounded. I could Soulcage as you again, for the duration of the visit with her. He heard only Keller's breathing for a few moments. "No," he muttered finally, with less than perfect stability to his voice. "No, that would not be a good plan. I'll have to suffer through it myself and weasel my way out of whatever she's hoping to talk about, without making her angrier." His fury cooled slowly off, replaced by worrisome thoughts of how he was ever going to get himself out of this. Montgomery said nothing more. Keller turned off the intercom, and Montgomery was left to the emptiness of the Soulcage. He didn't think himself guilty of any egregious wrong. He had done only what felt right in that situation. But Keller's reprimand made him feel guilty nonetheless. Their feelings ate at him, consumed his insides, and left him ever emptier. Suddenly Keller's voice came on once again. "You have another meeting with Willow today, Geo9." Montgomery's eyes grew big. "They're telling me it's time. Go ahead and climb into the Soulcage." There was a twitch in his movements as he stood up on his legs and grasped at the Soulcage's outer handles. The distinct fear was upon him that if he moved too quickly, showed too much eagerness, too much attachment, they would for some reason change their minds and never let him see Willow again. And at the same time there was a palpable fear that if he did not move quickly enough, the opportunity would somehow pass him by. His heart beat fast. Faster, faster, filled with worry. Oh, if Willow saw him acting like this, what would she think? He tried to ignore that terrible prospect as he climbed, somewhat calmly in appearance, up and into the Soulcage. The day had come. It was here at last. Willow Peters by his side again. Her thoughts together with his again. Their words playing off one another. It was actually time. He shut his eyes and tried to smile in the darkness as the cover slid over him and the Soulcage began to rumble. Pain took him, and then he was gone. He was standing in a body, the same lifelike android body as before, in the sun along a pathway by a placid green park. On a bench by a street lamp sat the same tall-faced, mustachioed man who had instructed him before. "Geo9, good to have you back," said the man. "Ready for round 2? He inhaled several breaths, only because his realistic programming forced him to, not because he needed the oxygen, and nodded slowly. He wore a light jacket and corduroy trousers. The sun, clear and yellow, shined upon him. His synthetic hair rippled slightly in the gentle wind. Dimly he smelled the fresh and pleasantly cool air. Sunshine, just like we had hoped for. "She's expecting you on a bench by the pond a little way down the path," the mustachioed man told him, preoccupied with something on his smart device. "I've been instructed to tell you that the company is hoping, if possible, to conduct experiments on the tangibility of the android body." He gave an insincere hint of a smile, mostly hidden underneath his white mustache. "Whatever manner of touching you can engage in would be beneficial for the experiment. Again, short of anything sexual, though I don't suppose that would be a consideration anyway here in the public park. Nothing forced, of course, be a gentleman. The same rules as before apply now. If you do anything you know you shouldn't do, you will be subject to serious penalties." So on and so forth. You know the deal. Any questions beyond what's already being relayed to your cranium? Montgomery felt slow again. It was hard to think. "Yes," he said, although that was primarily because he didn't want to irritate his superiors at all. He wanted to behave as well as he could, to stay with Willow as long as he could. The path beckoned him forward. "Splendid. I suggest you get moving, then. You're going to be late." The man's attention returned to his smart device, and Montgomery was left alone to start walking and then jogging forward. There weren't very many people out. It was still morning, probably 10 o'clock or thereabouts, and those who were out seemed to be in a hurry to get someplace. It was only because Montgomery spent too much time imprisoned, but everything he saw spoke such profound beauty to him. The well-curated flower beds, the trickling crystal fountain, the swaying eaves of the willow trees. There, around the bend, he found the pond. Bright green moss floated on the shores, and a single fisherman's boat with an elderly man and young boy inside floated serenely in the water's center. In the shade of a tree by the shore was Willow, sitting quietly on a lichen-painted wooden bench. A soft unbuttoned grey sweater adorned her body, along with a purple blouse and dark slacks. As if magnetic forces acted upon it, his face couldn't help but smile the closer he came to her. As he drew near, he noticed she was speaking. She was talking into a smart device. "What am I expected to do, then?" she said, emotion heavy in her voice. "I can't manage forever, either." Immediately Montgomery stopped. He was too close. She would turn any second and see him and realize he was listening in on her conversation, something that was none of his business. "Listen, I told you, I'm busy at the moment, all right? I don't have time to talk about this right now. I'll call you tonight." As sure as daylight, her eyes crept over and caught sight of Montgomery, and he faltered a bit as he raised his hand and waved hello. "Goodbye, then." "Goodbye. Yes, tonight. I'll talk to you then." She sighed heavily as she ended the phone call and put the device away. She cupped her hands together, a posture a bit twisted, and face solemn as she greeted him. "Baltimore, it's good to see you. Don't worry about that phone call." "Is everything all right?" he said, rubbing the back of his neck. She shrugged. "Money problems," she said simply. "My sister's being her nosy, crabby, debt-collector self. It's nothing pressing, though. She's just trying to pressure me because she needs money, but I've got another month to pay her back." "Well, that's good to hear," Montgomery said, birthing an awkward silence. Finally she said, "I guess you don't want to sit?" He chuckled and moved to sit beside her on the bench. "No, I'm sorry. It's just that I've got a lot on my mind, too." "Your life's no rosier than mine, then?" "I don't exactly have money troubles, so I wouldn't pretend to understand that, but I do feel trapped." "What do you mean?" He scratched his hair and laughed nervously, regretting speaking. What could he possibly say? "I want to go places," he decided, and it was more or less true. He would be happy if he could just go home to the West Dominants and stay there forever, but traveling was something he enjoyed too. "I want to see sights and places and people I've never seen before. I want to do new things, and I can't." He felt her sincere gaze upon him, those shimmering blue eyes. He shook his head. "My problems are nothing for you to be concerned about either. I'm getting by." He said the words, but only because he felt his programming urge him to. "I don't want to burden you." She smiled, and unexpectedly she said, "In some ways, hearing you say that actually makes me happy." He looked at her curiously. "I look at too many people and see no more than two emotions," she said. "They're either angry or they're lusty. Every hour that they're out with other people, they shift vapidly between those two feelings." She wasn't looking at him, which made him feel a bit better as she continued. "I know people must feel other things, but our culture has made them either taboo or superfluous. Being happy is only appropriate when we've won a victory over one of the other conglomerates, and being sad is never something you want to share. One thing I know about you already, Baltimore, is that you're different. You don't put on faces." He froze. She slid closer to him, and they looked out through the willow vines upon the still waters together. She was almost whispering. "You don't pretend to be a nationalist. You don't hide sadness. It feels like I can be myself around you. I haven't felt that with someone in a very, very long time." "Willow," he began, although he wasn't sure what words to say. "You're kind to say that. I think those are bold words." "Rubbish! I can tell that you're honest. I don't mean that you've told me everything about you, obviously. I just mean that it feels like honesty is your nature. It's how you prefer to be." He swallowed and smirked. "Maybe it's the only way I know how to be." "Well, what's wrong with that? I feel similar. I've never got anywhere by pretending or putting on faces, at least not anywhere I ultimately wanted to be." He shrugged. "Pretending can be helpful at times, like in work. You have to act the part of a professional even when you don't feel like one." "Yes, but I'm not talking about that." There was a quiet, reserved smile on her face. When had they drawn so close to each other? The shade of the willow trees blanketed them. Insects buzzed over the surface of the water, and the fisherman and the boy were shouting out in glee at catching a fish. "When I say there's nothing wrong with honesty, I mean with other people," she said. "Other people who you might want to grow closer to." Something in Montgomery felt a most disturbing sense of joy at that. He cleared his throat. "How can you know? I haven't been very close to anyone lately." How can you know that they're trustworthy?" To his utmost shock, he felt his chest tingle and his eyes burn with the moisture of impending tears. This body did feel real. Willow's eyes cast upward thoughtfully. Shadows alighted upon them from the canopy of leaves. "You can't," she said after a moment. "Not at first. I've been with men who I trusted only to learn things weren't as I thought they were. I've had friendships with all sorts of people where I never truly acted like myself around them." "So you either bear through betrayal or you pretend?" She thought for a long moment. "Sometimes that's what it comes down to," she admitted. "What do you do?" "I'm not sure," he said, and it was the truth. Montgomery's history was fuzzy, and he didn't feel confident in making something up for Baltimore, especially not now. "I don't know that there's one right answer. That's not to say there isn't one, but I don't know that there is." He swallowed. "People lie to each other or put on faces all the time. I've seen married couples do it. I've seen lifelong friends do it. Maybe there's nothing wrong with it." She smirked. "Devil's advocate, eh? If it's wrong, I suppose it will feel wrong. There are times when it's the only option. With my siblings, for instance, sometimes the only thing I can do is put on a face. Other times I can't bring myself to, and it would probably be better if I did. In professional settings, as you said, I put on a face because if I don't, I'll be thought of as weak. But don't you think there has to be a special sort of relationship that depends upon authenticity?" He nodded. "Yes." "I once had an aunt," she said, a wistful smile curling her lips. "An old one, fairly religious and extremely tacky. Any time I visited when I was a teenager, she would ask me the most invasive questions you can imagine. Whether I was dating, what I'd done with him, what I was doing for work, whether my boss thought I was a good employee or not, or whether any of my friends did drugs, that sort of thing." She giggled. "I learned how to evade her questions expertly after a few years. I got a bit immature. I fed her faulty information, or better yet, just admitted to any wrong she suspected me of committing. It almost became a game. It didn't bring me any closer with her, granted, but honesty wasn't good enough for her. Nothing was. I wonder how many people are the same way." Montgomery chuckled. "I can appreciate her amicability, if nothing else. She wanted to get to know you. That's more than you can say about most people these days." She nodded. "She did. And you're right. For all the embarrassing questions she asked, at least she asked. Nowadays it's much too dangerous to meet people." He felt more at ease the more she talked. It was like magic. He pocketed his hands and breathed a deep breath of air. "You laugh, but it's true. You never know who might be a Slav Asian spy or a serial killer." He shrugged facetiously, jokingly implicating himself. She smiled. "What would a Slav Asian spy want with me? I work for the government, I suppose, but only in childcare." "We're looking for extra troops," he said with a grin. "Got to start them young." She bit back a laugh. "You're a terrible comedian." He grinned. "At least you're honest." She held her hands behind her back for a moment. "Actually, if you want honesty..." She looked so uncomfortable. Montgomery furrowed his brow at her. What was she about to say? "I have a hard time believing you were ever a soldier, Baltimore." She chortled. "I'm sorry, it's nothing against you." He made a mock-offended face before giving her a light, playful shove. "It's a good thing for you I'm not a serial killer. That would have done it right there. Into the trunk with you." She giggled, and they stared into each other's eyes for a moment. He took some thought and then said, "You should let your sister know how it makes you feel when she talks to you like that." She raised an eyebrow. "Not to advise you differently from what you're already doing," he added. I just feel that the way you've spoken to me today, your candor, your thoughtfulness, if she got reminded that that's who she's talking to, maybe she wouldn't be so crabby." She stared at him for a moment, then stared away, and all the while he could see contemplative thoughts running through her mind, accompanied by what he thought was a shy smile. "Want to skip stones?" she said, pointing at the pond. They picked up the flattest rocks they could find by the shore and began pitching them into the water. Montgomery was just unused to this android body enough to make several awful tosses that plummeted immediately down below the surface, while Willow threw several that went for 2 skips, and even a couple that went 3. "You're good," he told her. "I haven't done this for too long, or I'd be beating you." "It's not really a competition," she laughed. "Really, for how little fun it is, you'd think we want to add on the satisfaction of winning." "All right, Mr. Hart, please, what would you rather do instead? You're the one who suggested meeting this park, weren't you?" "Did he?" A relayed bit of code to his brain told him that his superiors had indeed messaged her and set this date up while pretending to speak for him. "I guess that's true. Maybe I'm not preferential to the pond setting." She threw another stone. It went 3 skips, and they looked at him with curious eyes and a faint grin. "I like when it gets dark," he said, "and the lights come on and you can see the city starting to grow quiet. Assuming it does grow quiet." Well, it's only morning, so I can't help you there, but there are spots where you can see the city. Let's skip on over to the north side, if that's what you want to do. I'm not partial or anything. Whatever you want to do is all right. No, I insist, she said with a smirk. They walked for a few minutes along the path, seeing no other souls except for a little waddling troop of brown geese, a few of them merely goslings. Montgomery and Willow discussed what the proper term for baby goose was for a minute, and then moved on to speaking about the recent changes in the city. Montgomery was beyond glad to have the relevant information relayed to his mind as he needed it through sophisticated cyber-neural technology. He didn't have anything passionate to say, but he was at least relatively informed. They reached a spot, a single street lamp by the dirt path, with a perfect view between the trees of the city, tall grey buildings raised high into the big blue. There you are, said Willow. It's not as pretty as during the night, of course, but it's still something to see. Do you want to live in the city? He asked her suddenly, if you decide to settle down. There was a wry smile on her lips, and her eyes only occasionally met his as she said, settle down, as in meet a man and have a family with him? He shrugged again. It's not every woman's dream, I know, but I seem like that sort of girl. Is that what you were going to say? He felt his smile slipping. He raised his palms. I didn't... She chuckled. For your information, Mr. Baltimore, I have every intention of having children of my own someday, and to have them with a man to boot. She crossed her arms and smiled. You're smart to see that in me, because it's true. I work with children because I care about them. Of course I want to have some of my own. I don't quite understand why anybody wouldn't. He frowned thoughtfully. I wouldn't mind having children someday, but I can see why some wouldn't. There are days when I can't fathom the idea. How can someone like me ever be a father? You have days like that. Try actually working with children. I feel that way multiple times a week. She sighed deeply. But I just think about all the brilliant possibilities that children can bring. I think about how sad it makes me that the old cultures everywhere are dying because no one wants to have children. And I think of how much I want that. A family that actually, cares for one another. That's a novel concept, isn't it? Relatively speaking, as someone who works in the field, I can tell you that life for children has grown steadily and immensely worse over the course of the past century. For too many reasons to get into now, and I hate that so few people seem to care about that. He thought for a minute. Then he said, I care. She looked at him discerningly. I'll only trust you because of that whole honesty conversation we had earlier. I'm not entirely sure you weren't just saying that to try and impress me. Well, of course I'm saying it to impress you, he said with a grin, but that doesn't mean it isn't also true. Her smile deepened. She was pleased. She drew nearer, using slow but eager steps. They stood right in front of one another. You were very right earlier. It's hard to be vulnerable, he said. Hard to share so much that there are no masks at all. I guess I've been thinking about that. She looked expectantly into his eyes. I don't feel that difficulty with you, he continued, the words feeling scandalous as he said them. The opposite is true, if anything, and that's rare. A shockwave of prickly numbness rippled through his body. He stayed fixed on her sky-blue eyes. The breeze blew against their hair and skin. She spoke quietly. I feel the same way, Baltimore. His heart kindled. There was freedom embodied in his breast, and a kinetic force drawing the two of them together. Something intangible clicked, and their lips met, and it felt as if it had been an eternity too long for it to happen. When they parted, both were alight with fire. They sucked in deep breaths alive with a force and an energy both had felt all too scarcely. Something was vibrant in their gaze, life-giving, increasing with each moment spent united. Willow began to smile. Want to see each other more often? Yeah, he said, matching her grin. I'd like that. When he returned to the Soulcage, his superiors spoke about how the morning's experiment had been a thunderous success. Their countenances were alight with excitement at the economic prospects that would be brought about by the proliferation of androids of such sophisticated quality as to be able to fool another human being into believing they were real. To do business with the first company to produce such a product. There was a mountain of money to be made, an Everest of cash. But Montgomery fell asleep in his ratty mattress that night with a warm feeling of hope. It was an illogical feeling. Nothing had changed enough to make him believe he would be rescued or somehow escape from the soul cage that held him captive. He was just as much of an eternal prisoner now as he was last night. But he felt free nonetheless, in defiance of the thick walls that bound him, of the machine that demeaned him, of the men that watched and commanded him. He felt free. Those walls couldn't stop him from feeling the love he felt for Willow. They couldn't stop him from knowing that she cared about him too. She cares about me too. The words were colossal, world-shaking. As far as he was concerned, that knowledge alone broke the soul cage and his cell into a million pieces. He did not know when, he did not know how, but he did know that nothing would ever keep him apart from Willow forever. However, one thought did nag at him. Their moment of intimacy together had been false. He had felt it only as an android. The sensation was untrue. Montgomery's lips had never actually met Willow Peters's. But he wouldn't let that matter. They would find each other, solidify and verify their connection. The truth would win out, reality would win out, and he would eventually feel real, true love. The soul cage would not keep him captive any longer. That's the end of Chapter 7.